Okay. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Just get the mic. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. You're welcome to this side event today that has been convened by the Uganda Women Network, which is UWONET, FIDA Uganda, the Uganda Association of Women Lawyers, the Ministry of Gender that is actually leading this journey with us, CEPESA, which is also an NGO in Uganda that does work around technology-facilitated violence, data governance, and the broader issues around that. And we'd like to welcome you here today. Apologies, we are beginning a little later. We had a few issues to solve, but we are now good to go. This particular side event is themed Access to Justice in Technology-Facilitated Gender-Based Violence. And we are asking ourselves the question, are we prepared for the escalating digital threats? Distinguished colleagues and partners, I'd like to welcome you to this very important conversation. And as we begin, I just wanted us to set the tone for this particular conversation. It is important to recognize that the issue we are discussing today is not only about individual incidents of online violence. And as we continue this conversation, I'd like for us to shift calling it online violence to technology-facilitated gender-based violence. So across the conversation, you will hear the speaker and myself call it TFGBV. I just thought we'd begin there so that we are not confused with a lot of the short terms that we usually use in our NGO speak. So this particular event is it is part of a much broader conversation about data governance, digital power, and gender equality in the digital age. So across the world and increasingly across Africa, digital technologies are reshaping how societies are functioning. Digital platforms influence how information circulates, how economies operate, how citizens participate in governance, and how identities are expressed. But as these digital systems grow, they also generate new power structures and risks, particularly for women and girls. TFGBV, or Technology-Facilitated Gender-Based Violence, sits at the intersection of digital governance and structural gender inequality. Online harassment, cyberbullying, image-based abuse, and coordinated digital attacks are actually not isolated events. They are often symptoms of a broader system in which data flows, platform algorithms, content moderation policies, and regulatory gaps shape whose voices are amplified, whose safety is protected, and whose rights are overlooked. Platforms such as TikTok, I know for many of us on this table who came from Uganda, I know almost everybody has a TikTok account. You don't even need to sign in. You only need to click that link and you will quickly be able to see as many videos as possible on a particular subject. If a building caught fire right now, in the next 30 minutes, there will be so many content creators sharing about that thing in the shortest of time. And this is courtesy of online technology being able to facilitate this. Facebook, Instagram, they've all created powerful spaces for connection and participation. Just last week during our Women's Day celebration, we were spotlighting women businesses that have leveraged the internet, technology to be able to sell their products. I know many of us these days sit in the comfort of our homes and we order for whatever we want online, on Instagram, on TikTok, on WhatsApp. you know, with different statuses of people sharing what they're selling and what it is that they're interested in buying. So we see that technology is actually playing a key role in even enhancing how women participate in the economy, how they're able to grow their small businesses. Research and advocacy organizations like ourselves, like Policy, like UGNET, like CIPESA, have shown and have helped illuminate how technology-facilitated gender-based violence manifests in Uganda and across the region, from coordinated harassment campaigns and non-consensual image sharing to digital blackmail and actually cyber stalking. These harms are not simply online issues. They have real consequences for women's mental health, for economic participation, political engagement, and personal security. It's very common that often victims of online violence will see that their perpetrators will follow them through to their homes. People get stalked on Instagram, and before you know it, someone has actually been murdered. I think this is very common, right? There was a student in Kenya just last week. I think somebody followed her as she walked. I think she's a student in Oxford and was killed off, right? And this is somebody, I think, who used a pin of Instagram that she has shared. So these are not just clips. This is not just glam. This is not just Instagram for us to share beautiful pictures of a wedding, part of a party you are at with friends. It has real consequences at the end of the day. And from a feminist perspective, because that's from where I work, these issues compel us to speak about deeper issues, and these are some of the issues we are inviting you today to think about or reflect on with us. And one of such questions I would like to draw our attention to is, who controls the infrastructure of digital communication? In Uganda, where we are coming from, in East Africa, where many of you come from, in African countries, globally, from where many of you participants come from, whose experiences shape platform policies? Who bears the burden when safety mechanisms fail? Last week, I was just reflecting on many times when there's child pornography that is put on TikTok, on Instagram, or Twitter. Who is responsible to remove it when people report? When it is not removed, when many people report it, where do I go? And I'm speaking from, you know, my perspective as a lawyer, but how about a regular woman who has their child on Instagram and their picture is used for sexual content? You report. Aside from that click where they say, report whoever is using your child's picture in a manner that you haven't approved. So too often, survivors of online violence encounter systems that are not designed with them in mind. And this is not new for many of us women, as we talk about the economy, as we talk about our participation in a lot of things. And this is why today's conversations must be conversations about data governance, platform responsibility, and digital justice all in one. It's also why today we will discuss feminist perspectives and why they are very critical in shaping the future of digital governance and all this work that we're talking about today. I'd also like to recognize that we cannot do this alone as NGOs or as civil society. We are simply complementary. Our work is simply complementary to the work that the government does. What is the role of the government in managing TFGBV? Are we actually really prepared? We do have on our panel someone from the DPP's office who will be speaking about prosecuting these cases. What are the challenges that they are currently facing? What can FIDA and other NGOs that will be speaking today do to support their work better, to ensure that access to justice in technology-facilitated violence is actually a reality for African girls and women? And then lastly, we'll also look at what is the role of these technology companies, the big tech companies that are actually facilitating these platforms and what they do. What can governments and CSOs do to prompt the big companies to be able to respond to the growing nature of gender-based online? Let me introduce my panel quickly. I'll actually give each one an opportunity a little later to introduce themselves, but before that, allow me have the pleasure of inviting our Honorable Minister, who will be opening this event, and thereafter we'll have remarks from our Deputy Ambassador, who will also be leading us into the other part of the conversation. You're welcome, Honorable.
Thank you. Thank you, distinguished delegates, colleagues, partners, and friends. Good morning and welcome to Uganda House. And it's my great honor to join you today for this important discussion on access to justice in the context of technology-facilitated gender-based violence. I wish to thank the organizers, Figure Uganda, Uganda Women's Network. These are two organizations in Uganda that if you don't talk about it, you've not talked about the women's civil society in Uganda. So let's clap for them. The face of civil society for women in Uganda, our partners in government and civil society for convening this timely dialogue during the CSW. Across Uganda and the wider East Africa, digital technologies have transformed the way we communicate, the way we plan, conduct business, and participate in our civic life. I'm sure most of you have your phones. And if you forget the phones, you will turn back and go to your rooms immediately. And platforms like social media enable greater access to information, expanded economic opportunities, and created new spaces for civil engagement, particularly for young women. And but alongside this opportunity, we must also confront the emerging risks. Women and girls are increasingly experiencing technology-facilitated GBV, including cyber stalking, online harassment, non-consensual sharing of intimate images, digital blackmail, impersonation, and coordinated online abuse. These forms of violence often expand beyond the digital space, affecting women's mental health, livelihoods, participation in public discourse, and access to justice. The government of Uganda recognizes that digital transformation must be accompanied by strong government frameworks that protect citizens, their rights, and their safety. Our Constitution guarantees equality before the law and affirms the state's obligation to protect the dignity and rights of all citizens, including women and girls. Building on this provision, the government has enacted a number of laws that address emerging digital arms and strengthen accountability in online spaces. The Computer Misuse Act of 2011 criminalizes cyber harassment, offensive communication, identity theft, and other forms of misuse of digital systems. The Data Protection and Privacy Act of 2019 establishes safeguards for the protection of personal data, privacy, and responsible data safeguards management in the digital ecosystem. These laws are implemented by governments and it addresses violence and exploitation broadly. We also have the Domestic Violence Act of 2010 and the Prevention of Trafficking in Persons Act 2009, which complements those specific laws on online. Recognizing the growing importance of digital governance, the government of Uganda established the National Information Technology Authority Uganda under the law which is called the National Information Technology Authority Uganda Act of 2009. The creation of this institution marked an important step towards strengthening national capacity to regulate, coordinate, and guide the development of information and communication technologies in Uganda. Through the leadership of the National Information Technology Authority, government has worked to build coherent national framework for ICT governance, cybersecurity, delivery, and responsible data management. Key policy frameworks such as the National Information and Communication Technology Policy and the National Cybersecurity Strategy help guide efforts to ensure that Uganda's digital transformation remains secure, inclusive, and rights respecting. These frameworks are increasingly relevant as we address issues of technology-facilitated violence, digital safety, and data governance. Online abuse, exploitation, and harassment often involve the misuse of personal data, the manipulation of digital identities, and exploitation of platform vulnerabilities. Effective responses therefore require coordinated approaches that combine legal reform, digital regulation, platform accountability, and strengthen investigation capacity. In addition, the government of Uganda continues to promote innovation in digital service delivery and justice sector modernization. Through collaboration with the justice, law, and order sector, institutions are strengthening digital case management systems, improving coordination between law enforcement and prosecutors, and expanding the capacity of cyber crime investigations units. At the community level, the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development works through the government structures, including community development officers and gender officers, to promote awareness of gender-based violence, to strengthen referral systems of survivors, and support community-based response that bridge the gap between digital harms and real-world justice mechanisms. These efforts are guided by national gender frameworks, such as the National Policy and the National Policy on the Elimination of Gender-Based Violence, which emphasizes prevention, protection, and coordinated responses across sectors. However, government action alone is not sufficient. Addressing technology-facilitated gender-based violence requires multi-sectoral stakeholder collaboration. Technology companies must strengthen safety by design mechanisms and transparent content moderation policies. Civil society organizations and researchers play a crucial role in documenting trends, supporting survivors, and informing policy responses. Justice institutions must continue building technical capacity to investigate digital crimes and protect victims. At the same time, we must also invest in digital literacy and online safety awareness, ensuring that women and girls are empowered to participate confidently and safely in digital spaces. Digital technology should be a force for empowerment, for innovation and inclusion, not a tool for intimidation or abuse. Women and girls must be able to engage freely in public discourse, participate in economic life, and access opportunities in the digital world without fear. Today's discussion is therefore both timely and necessary. By bringing together justice actors, policymakers, technology experts, societies, we can identify practical solutions to strengthen access to justice, accountability, and digital safety. The government of Uganda remains committed to working with all partners to ensure that our laws, institutions, and digital systems evolve together to protect the rights, dignity, and safety of women and girls in both physical and online spaces. With that, I thank the organizer for convening this important dialogue and wish you a productive discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. as we work around the technology of making sure that we have the Deputy Head of Mission and Head of Cooperation at the Embassy of the Kingdom of Netherlands in Kampala, who is meant to also give us remarks. You will allow me just to move to the next part and also request that immediately he gets on, we will give opportunity to give his opening remarks then. Kindly bear with us on that. I will therefore start with the conversation. I'll give just a minute to my panelists to introduce themselves, and then we'll get into the conversation.
My name is 𝐀𝐜𝐜𝐬𝐬. I'm an Assistant Director of Public Prosecutions. I am a prosecutor, and I've been at this work for about 12 years. And in the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions of Uganda, I head the Department of Gender, Children and Sexual Offences. Happy to be here. I am happy to be here. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Rita Hope Achiro. I work with Uganda Women's Network, UWONET, the largest women's network in Uganda, and I work as the Executive Director. I am a feminist, a women's rights and human rights activist. I've been at this for the last 27 years. I eat, sleep, women and girls' rights. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you very much. We are part of this huge network, and we have done a lot of work still with the individual institution that is UWONET. I'd like to also have another of our speaker that is online, Miss Patricia. The team controlling online, kindly unmute Patricia to allow her introduce herself. Patricia, if you're able to switch on your video, then well and good. Still feel free to speak using the mic without the video. The team at the back end, kindly unmute Patricia to allow her introduce herself. Okay. Yes, is anyone able to hear us online? Just kindly give us a thumbs up if you can hear us online. The team, kindly unmute Patricia to allow her introduce herself. Yes. Yeah. All right. Patricia, you will be given an opportunity to introduce yourself. Patricia works with CIPESA, which is also an institution that has a lot of interest in data governance, things to do with technology facilitated violence, and the broader conversation on TFGBV in East Africa. Patricia will be able to introduce herself immediately she's unmuted. And allow me right now to get into the first question, which is going to Rita. And Rita, the first question is that as a network that works very closely with over 30 women's rights institutions, how or what are the patterns that you're observing in how technology facilitated gender-based violence is affecting women in communities where you work, and the barriers that survivors usually that they face in attempting to report or seek justice for this kind of abuse?
Thank you, Elizabeth. First of all, we all know that increasingly we see our work as a national women's network that technologically facilitated gender-based violence is not a new form of violence in isolation. That is one thing we've noted. But rather, it's a digital extension of the structural inequalities that we have faced. So violence has always been there, and this is the extension. The other thing is that digital platforms are becoming arenas where existing gender norms are reinforced with new intensity. It is now, you know, when you say from bad to worse, so it's being reinforced with new intensity. Women, particularly those who step into the public arena or discourse, whether as a political leader, an activist, a journalist, an entrepreneur, a young opinion shaper, often find that visibility itself becomes a trigger of attack. And if you're going to be a woman leader who is not visible, then your leadership is limited. But now with technology, the more visible you are, the more open book you are to attack. Of our women, particularly those in the public spaces, have faced. So what does that mean? More women would rather remain small, see themselves as small, even if they should be in the public space. There is also a clear and troubling pattern that more visible and outspoken women become, the more likely she is the one to face coordinated harassment that is designed only to silence her. Uganda has just come out of elections. And believe you, some of us are bleeding. Our most vocal, strong women have been thrown out. Majority of them targeted because of the strength, because of the use. So the women are being pushed to the periphery. The more visible you are, the more dangerous for society using technology. We have also seen that particularly among women in politics and women in the civic space. Ugandan women leaders, we have a number of examples, I might not want to give you names here, have repeatedly been subjected to deeply gendered online attacks, including sexualized insults and attempts to undermine their credibility. Women of high level and caliber, doctors, professors, but somebody will bring you to a level that, you know, all levels are important. But you imagine women who young girls aspire to be like them are brought to that level. And everybody's on this social media. So you see your professor, you see your MP, you see, you know, your minister brought to that level. What does that mean? The other thing that Elizabeth we're also seeing is the hostility that these people face online, increasingly becoming an occupational risk for women who work and depend on public engagement. For a very long time as Uganda, we prided ourselves as one of those countries, especially on the continent, that have fronted women in big and large numbers, both statistically, but also in terms of the quality. Unfortunately, now with technology, we're seeing our quality going down because people are starting to self-censor themselves. The women and girls are hiding behind because they don't want to be attacked. The violence is not limited only to high-level profile women. That is something we must also note. That at community level, we are seeing deeply concerning trends among younger women and girls, particularly around cyberbullying. The WhatsApp groups, you know, non-consensual sharing, as the minister said, of intimate, you know, teenagers and all that, it demeans them, it takes away their self-confidence. Academically, the girls start, you know, dropping out of school because of naming and shaming. So it is having a lot of effect. Women organizations who are working in schools and universities, as coordinate, of course, with FIDA and a number of other organizations, we have what we call the Domestic Violence Coalition. But prior to that, there was a time we had to go into one of our oldest universities, in Makerere University, where girls were now mentally being affected and they were not attending lectures because they're being harassed. Then you wonder why these girls are not graduating. Online harassment. The 𝐶𝐜𝐜𝐬𝐬 is already shaping educational outcomes, as I said, mental health, and future opportunities for young women. That is something that should concern us. The other emerging issue is the pattern that is targeting of women entrepreneurs who rely on digital platforms for their livelihood. We are promoting everybody to use, go technology. Now you're promoting your products online. At the same time, you're having a backlash. Facebook, the marketplaces, Instagram, and all these are now becoming a harassment place for women, impersonation. Yesterday, Honorable Penny was here, somebody even put another, they got her dress, but the face is not hers. She's supposed to be on a very high level panel. That is the advantage. But the flip side is it could have been anything else. So, particularly, therefore, 𝐶𝐜𝐜𝐬𝐬 is not just a safety issue, but also an economic justice issue. Because if women are going to shy away from politics, if women are going to shy away from engaging in trade and marketing, that is going to affect their livelihoods. Women are pushed out of digital marketplaces through intimidation. And therefore, we must begin to ask ourselves whether these are actually protecting women or women's rights participation in the digital economy is being challenged. So, despite the growth in this violation, I must also say we have had some entry points, just like the minister said. We have a number of laws that have been introduced. The Computer Misuse Act, the Data Protection and Privacy Act. All these laws are there. However, the gaps still exist. As women's rights organization, we recognize these gaps. And one of the things now we have done is to ensure that in all our programming, we integrate technology as one of the key areas. As much as it is a facilitator, it's also a barrier for women. Unfortunately, at the grassroots level, organizations frequently encounter survivors who believe online abuse is something they must endure. That is the unfortunate bit. This is life, what can I do? So they think they must endure, and at times they blame themselves for going online. Survivors attempt to report these cases to institutions. Many times our own institutions fail survivors. You might not blame many of them. You might not blame many of these institutions because they're equally new in this area. You go to a policeman, he might not know what to do, or a policewoman. So they are also trying to cope. What does that mean? Everybody has to embrace and integrate issues of technology in their work. I don't know, Elizabeth, whether I've answered enough of your issues, but basically, those are some of the things that we are doing. Social attitudes also remain a major barrier. Victim blaming. You've seen our young people who market, then they'll say, but why did you put yourself there? You looked for that. You know, if you hadn't gone online, you wouldn't have been abused. These responses reflect deeper patriarchal beliefs about who is allowed to occupy public space. Now, who extends or takes away the digital life from you? The message for women, therefore, is we must not receive and accept that we are going to do away with technology. It's part of us. We must develop risk mitigation mechanism to ensure and girls are protected online. Thank you.
I think that Rita sets the tone very clearly for the conversation. A lot of young women are online advertising their products, and after you get abused, someone will ask why you put your face on a product. But then when you go to a web, they're telling you how to market, they're telling you your business starts with you. So let people see you and associate you with your business. So which is which? But also among discussions on economic empowerment through 𝐿Net, through FIDA, and other human rights institutions that work with women, will tell you that we are exploring how to get more women markets using the digital space. So how safe is this space where we are inviting these women to? Our ambassador, our deputy ambassador is here, and allow me today, ladies and gentlemen, to welcome Mr. 𝐉𝐼𝐵, who is the Deputy Head of Mission and Head of Cooperation at the Embassy of the Kingdom of Netherlands in Kampala, Uganda. This embassy has been supporting the work of FIDA on women economic empowerment and access to justice and generally gender equality. We have empowered many women in different constituents where we work, courtesy of the support that we have received. I'd like to welcome you, Your Excellency, if you are on, to kindly go ahead and give your remarks.
Who is he? Who's the person?
I think there's just a small challenge. And as we manage that, just kindly allow me then extend the opportunity to our second speaker, Miss Patricia. Kindly go right ahead and unmute. Beautiful. We can see your video now. Kindly go ahead and submit.
Yeah, I'm very stressed.
Yes.
To unmute myself. So hi everyone. I hope you can hear me. I am Patricia Elimbabazi from CIPESA, Uganda. CIPESA, as they mentioned before, it's a collaboration on international ICT policies for East and Southern Africa. We do work across the continent. So if you find us in North Africa, do not ask why we are there. We do work across. And we do work around issues of women, TFGBV. I know the minister and also Rita talked about the different laws and policies in place to protect women in online spaces. But also I wanted to flag the resolution 522 at the African Union that specifically talks about protection of women against violence in online spaces. And this is one of the tools that we have used at CIPESA to work with different partners across Africa in protection of women in digital spaces. So it is very interesting for us to be part of this conversation, given the work that we do continental-wise, and I hope and look forward to meaningfully. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Patricia. I was hoping that you could also respond to one of the questions that we had for you today morning, which is around the fact that, you know, you've spoken about CIPESA's work around digital rights, internet governance, technology policy in Africa. How can African governments strengthen regulatory and policy frameworks to hold technology platforms accountable while also protecting digital rights and freedom of expression? in the African continent?
Thank you for that question. Just to flag one of our very interesting meetings that we always have at CIPESA, every September we hold what we call FIFA Africa, which is the Forum on Internet Freedoms in Africa. And in these meetings, in this forum or this conference, we normally invite the big tech. We call them the big tech in our space, but these are like what you've just mentioned, technology companies. We bring in Meta, we have Google, we have Microsoft, and so forth. And we have asked this question: what is your role? When all this is happening, what are you doing in the background? What are you doing to protect women? What are you doing to protect users? And the first, I think the first point is that tech companies are doing more than what they were doing a few years ago. But the reality is that the response is still not fully meeting the needs of survivors. We have seen platforms introduce stronger community standards, clearer reporting tools, more proactive moderation, and some safety by design measures, such as blocking. Right now, you can block someone from seeing your content. You can limit who can contact you. You can limit contact users. You can filter abusive messages. You can take down some non-consensual intimate content more quickly, as opposed to the last few years, we are not able to do that. So there is a movement, yeah, and it's only fair that we acknowledge the fact that tech companies are doing something, they've done something, but at the same time, for many survivors of TFGBV, the experience is still frustrating. We have done several webinars. The last one we had here in Uganda, we had the judiciary, we had the judge, her lordship, Monica Mugenyi, and she was also sharing her perspectives on this, mentioning the fact that she also faces this. Women judges face this. So I know at some point Elizabeth was talking about content creators or people that have. Pardon?
Sorry, we lost you for a second.
Oh.
Really a minute. Yes.
I have been speaking and speaking. Where did you lose? Where did you lose me from? I could go
Last
back.
45 seconds. So yeah, feel free to continue.
Okay. But what I was saying is that we've had these conversations. So for many survivors of TFGBV, the experience is still frustrating. Reporting can be confusing. It can be slow, sometimes very impersonal. A survivor may report an abuse, but will not know what happened next, right? And will not know whether the content was reviewed properly, will not know whether the perpetrator faced any consequences or whether the evidence was preserved for legal action. So the issue is not only whether platforms have rules, it is, we have to look at whether those rules actually translate into safety, dignity, as well as remedy for the people that are affected. So for me, the biggest gap is that platforms still rely on heavily on generic reporting systems for very specific harms. Yeah, online gender-based violence is not just about bad content in abstract. It includes cyber stalking, it includes sexual harassment, threats, doxing, intimate image abuse, impersonation, and now, I know someone also mentioned it, we have the AI-generated sexualized content. So all that fits into that basket, and this requires a more tailored survivor-centered response, as opposed to have a generic spreadsheet where you have to find this or that. And then also platforms need reporting systems that are easier to use, that are available in local contexts and languages, and that are designed around the realities of survivors or the realities that the survivors are facing. The other thing that, again, still to that question, as you're asking, we can't have this conversation without the roadmap to justice. And also tech companies, they need to work with CSOs, such as FIDA Uganda. They need to work with justice departments in the different countries. not only to take down the content, but also accountability, because we do have these laws in the countries. The African Union has gone ahead with that resolution 522. Is it binding? No, but it's a good guideline for African countries to use. The provisions are very well laid out. If you interact with it, you'll be very interested to know that it actually, well, it talks about women, but TFGBV cuts across. We were just last year in the UPR processes, Universal Periodic Reviews, TFGBV came up. And I know Uganda is up for review this year. I am certain that is going to come up, because this is one of the things that CIPESA also uses as a mechanism. And we will definitely be documenting TFGBV cases and so forth. So yeah, it is not, I think, to close this, the real test of platform accountability is not whether companies say the right things, but whether survivors can actually find safety or abuse. But it's the bridge. Do we have the bridge between tech companies, civil society, government, and the judicial systems? Or is it from tech companies to governments, given the tools that we've just mentioned? So that's one of the things that we need to think about when it comes to the role of the tech companies around TFGBV. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Patricia. I think we can locate what the big tech is meant to do and what it is doing and what more we need for them to do. You referenced the UPR process, and I already see Rita Bonet that usually us in the UPR, in the women's network, the women's cluster. I already see the need to co-opt CIPESA if we would like to have that intersection between gender and TFGBV when presenting our report. I'd like to come to a speaker from the Director of Public Prosecutions, right, on what main challenges for you see, Samali, in investigating and prosecuting these cases, including issues that are related to digital evidence and jurisdiction. I know that earlier when the minister was speaking, she did speak about the Evidence Act having been amended to make sure that electronic evidence is something that can be useful in these criminal processes. But what are some of those challenges that persist?
This is a very interesting conversation. One, because technology is very, very volatile. And when it comes to issues of evidence, it becomes more complicated. More often in our communities, we want to perceive abuse as physical abuse. And therefore, when we talk about technology facilitated abuse, many people will not quite understand what we are talking about. And like Rita said, there will be, okay, this is me, then what happens? But the challenge that we face now when it comes to gathering of evidence is the fact that perpetrators seem to be ahead of everybody else. So they know how to navigate the system more than the victims of crime. And also over and above investigators. So as technology changes, you will find that the perpetrator is using a higher version of the system, and the police and the response team have a lower version. And that in itself presents a challenge in investigation. And also due to its global nature, most of the perpetrators pose as anonymous. I once prosecuted the case of a young man who kept raping girls from almost all universities across the country. I had a victim in Akawa, Moops, I had a victim in Chambogo, I had 3 victims in Makerere University, I had another at Nkumba University, but one perpetrator. But online, he was presenting himself as Esther. So the victims would go to meet Esther with believing that they are meeting a female acquaintance online, and every time they would reach there, they don't find Esther, but they would rather find a man. So after the commission of the offense, now how do you begin tracking and ensuring that this person is arrested? I followed him and then I charged him for the offense. So we have offenses that are beginning online and then manifesting offline. So that also presents its own challenges when it comes to prosecution of these cases. But then also you have mentioned the laws, Computer Misuse Act and then data protection laws. To gather that evidence in itself is a mountain. The process of preservation, you can't access somebody's phone or computer without a court order. So you can imagine in a system where the evidence is very volatile, you have to first go to court and obtain a court order. By the time you return, it has been deleted. So police would not likely find the content in the manner in which it was presented. But something critical I want to bring to this table is what is coming up now with social media influencers. Who are these? So the perpetrator, who could be an intimate partner or who could be somebody close to the victim, may not go and post that content on their own, but they will use a social media influencer. And they are using social media influencers to frustrate reporting and intimidate follow-up of cases. I have one particular one where they hired somebody who seems to be, who calls herself a presidential advisor, but she goes online and is abusing the mother of the victim and the victim herself, and discussing the case as police has no evidence and how the perpetrator is innocent. And the question is, were you there? But that is the responsibility they have, to be online. And because they are idle, they are online from morning up to evening. So such comments tend to influence the line of investigations, and it also tends to corrupt the entire justice system. Because now you are creating two courts. We have a court of law, and then we have a court of the public. And the public court now has a very big say when it comes to technology and related offenses. So it is something that we need to look at. Who and how do you regulate a social media influencer? And interestingly, they have a very big following. And they leverage on the fact that they have a large following, and know that even when you try to also go and stop them, you'll become their next target. And that's how it goes on. So the technology itself presents a broader pool of easily accessible targets. It presents hard to identify perpetrators, because it is difficult to stop the spread of the harmful content. It becomes a challenge in terms of prosecution. So the gaps we have is that some of the laws do not provide comprehensive coverage of many of the abuses. And recently, the more you test the Computer Misuse Act, the more you find bigger challenges. When we try to prosecute cases on this offense that we talked about earlier today, offensive communication. So the question that courts were asking was, what is offensive? And then offensive to who? Basically, it should be offensive to me, the victim. As long as I find it offensive, then the law should protect me. But now you find it becoming a challenge to the extent that actually I think that section was outlawed by court. And now we don't have an offense called offensive communication, meaning that people now can go online and do whatever havoc they want to somebody's personality, which is also a problem. So the responders to this crime, who include police, prosecution, and judicial officers have not come to a clear understanding of what the consequences of these crimes are, and the fact that they need to respond to it effectively. The other related crimes like cyber harassment, cyber stalking, call for a lot of issues when it comes to possible recovery and then preservation of digital evidence. Then also, how do you present inputs? When it comes to disclosure of evidence, the requirement of the law is that you must present this evidence to the defense so that they are able to. But now, what you disclose to the defense lawyer, and what are the chances that also disclosing, you are also not becoming a perpetrator? When you're dealing with pornography-related content, can you share copies? Who do you share with? I believe such guidelines, if they are clearly put down in the laws, they make the prosecution of some of these cases a little bit easier. I hope I have answered you. And probably to talk about institutional preparedness. As the Office of the DPP, we have a full cyber crime unit. And then also at police, we also have the cyber unit that does investigations and management of these kind of cases. So we want to encourage as many people as possible to report the challenges notwithstanding. But I am also privileged to be on part of the National Working Committee on Anti-Pornography. So we have those censoring teams that censor pornographic content. I am aware that to access TikTok, to access Instagram, and also other social media platforms, there is an age limit. However, those age limits are not enforced. And people are accessing TikTok at any age, which should not be the case. So it's important that we emphasize the issue of regulation of the use of the internet, and then also emphasize reporting. The collaboration is already there. At NITAU, we have a special portal that sees and censors any pornographic content, and we pull it down. But of course, sometimes some of it will go assisted. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think somebody has positioned the huge challenge that we're dealing, especially as lawyers that work very closely with the DPP's office. The danger, the fact that the perpetrators are usually actually a step ahead. The fact that you need a court order. I do not know how many people have pursued a court order and how difficult that process is. As easy as it is when you write it down, the process is quite difficult for a regular citizen to get a court order to allow for them to pursue this matter. So those challenges are important for us to discuss, but also I see plenty of people that are not from home. So would like to also hear from you what is happening in your country. How is this problem manifesting? I'd like to take this opportunity first to recognize a special group of people online that we do have, the �H𝐜𝐻𝐵. The �H𝐜𝐻𝐵 is Gender Equality Innovation, is supported by the Gender Equality Innovation Fund that is funded by one of our development partners, Crossroads, which is an initiative to engage young people, young people and CLVs or community legal volunteers that many of you in your countries may be calling paralegals. And we do have them all the way in an up-country district in Kampala, and they are joining at one of our hubs to be part of this particular event, to one showcase that inclusion is possible for grassroots activists in such conversations, but also it is actually possible for us not to leave anyone behind. So for the team that is on from the �H𝐜𝐻𝐵 in Arua, I'd like to say hello. And to everybody that is joining online, I'd like to recognize from home. I know it's extremely late there, it's after work hours, but I think you found this extremely important, and that's why you are on here. So thank you very much. We will come to you to give comments during the plenary. I see your hearts and your thumbs up. I hope that we are following the conversation through. I'd just like to check on the team online, the technical team, if the deputy ambassador is now on to allow me welcome him. Let me just get a thumbs up from the team if he's on right now, and then he will give his remarks before we go to the last round of questions and then plenary. Not yet on. All right, we will be sure to let him in when he gets on. I think he dropped off, he was on earlier. The technology today is proving not too much to be talked about, but we shall pass there. Let me come back to you, Rita. So from the perspective of women's movements and grassroots organizing, what strategies are proven most effective in building digital literacy and in solidarity and collective responses to counter technology-facilitated violence against women? Why we ask this is because many times young people have been told, if you're being abused on Facebook, why don't you just close your account and get off the platform altogether? Why are you on Twitter bickering? Get off if you're being abused and get on with life. But from what Samali said earlier, and from what Rita said earlier, many of our lives are evolving and technology is now part of our education system. It's part of the work that Samali does in the PPP's office. It's part of women selling their product. It's part of our lives. So it's not something that we can quickly say, get off the platform altogether to run away from this abuse. That's not possible. So in that place, Rita, how do you encourage solidarity from especially women movements, women organizations that may not have already recognized technology-facilitated violence as an important subject to talk about in the movement?
Elizabeth, as I said earlier on, TFGBV is not an isolated form of violence. It's just an expansion or an extension. Something we've been working on for years, decades, as the women's movement in terms of how do we respond to gender-based violence. So one of the key areas or strategies of response for us as the feminist movement in solidarity building. Solidarity has been very crucial to us, conscience raising and conscientizing. About maybe now 10 years ago, one of the key, the most trying cases was a woman member of parliament who was stalked by a young man. And people thought it was something simple. This lady up to today is traumatized. She even tried to run again, but that was used against her. That was one of the first cases we had to do. And it was so difficult, we didn't know what to do. Do you use the legal process? It was proving very tedious. So as the women's movement, one of the key strategies we use is solidarity. And through the solidarity that we built around her, the counseling that we helped her with, she's been able to slowly recover and find herself. And even in the last election, where she tried to run again, it's because of solidarity. Not because that she got justice in court of law. So solidarity is one of the key strategies that sisters can gather around you and say, you're not alone, we are with you and we're working together. The other is training digital literacy. For a long time, this has been something, as women, many times new things were first left out. But now we have gone out on our fours and saying digital literacy is a must for everybody. In NGOs, CPESA, we use a lot of the work that they do to train women, going to the grassroots organizations and training them and say, do not take these things for granted. Training women politicians. There was a time women politicians were even fearing. They even just had the phobia of touching a computer. And yet they are always on their phones, not knowing all their information is online. So now we are deeply invested. The fact that we are also acutely aware that their reputation and everything is at risk if they do not know how to use technology. So capacity building is one of the key areas. The other, of course, is ensuring that these laws that we have passed in the country, as much as the implementation still remains quite a challenge. In law, they say ignorance is law. So ensuring that people understand their rights and obligations is an area that we are also working on. And then collective advocacy, we continue to advocate as women's rights organizations, particularly influencing legal and policy processes to see what is working and what's not working to enable effective implementation of those laws. The other promising strategy is strengthening solidarity mechanisms within the women's movement, but also beyond the women's movement, particularly online attacks. We are now going also online. You attack a woman, we'll go full force. So we've now developed a script of how to defend women online to ensure that we are able to demystify some of the misinformation and disinformation that is put out there. I was sharing with somebody yesterday, I think it's about 10 years ago, one of our women who wanted to run for a very high office, and there was a huge attack on her. So we a few of us sat together and got everything that she had done well in the country, including her academic and other credentials. We made it our business to go to every media house and go online to defend her. And she got that office, a very big office. So we have to also put up our faces and stand strong. The other is intergenerational collaboration. As you know, technology, the younger you are, I think the more, having you are. So working with the younger people and bringing them on board to support the older ones is something that we are also encouraging. Most of our trainers are now young women who understand tech like this. They know how it is moving. Just like somebody said, somebody has already, you're using this version, they have already moved to another version, and at times even evidence is erased. So we're also getting young women, especially young women. We work with young men as well, but getting young women who can support us in our advocacy. The intersection of experiences and innovation in creating more adaptive responses is something that we are also using. These experiences are raising important strategic questions about our sustainability. How do we sustain that? Technology is moving quickly. So getting young people, supporting them, sponsoring them to also go back to school and study. Some of our young women understand technology. Somebody told us if we do not invest in technology as women, technology will forget us. And that is something that we are investing in. At the grassroots level, the majority of our women are at the grassroots level. And we are also ensuring that demonstrating that they're able to use technology and ensure that they protect themselves is something crucial. In our work we do with them, whether it's economic empowerment, whether it's woman counselor, ensuring that they use technology to protect themselves has also worked for us. So those are some of the strategies. And I think for us as the women's movement in Uganda, now embracing technology and integrating it in all our work is a big strategy that we have taken.
Thank you so much, Rita. I like that you also keep highlighting some of the groups that are more vulnerable. Women in politics, and public office or governance, journalists, women influencers, women in business right now, journalists, yes, I've mentioned journalists, and that already keeps many of them out of that space altogether. So thank you very much, Rita, for speaking on that. We do have His Excellency 𝐁𝐜𝐜𝐬𝐬. We would like to apologize for the back and forth earlier, and we know that it is after past work hours for you, but you have stayed to be able to give us these remarks today. We do not take it for granted, and we also do not take it for granted that you are investing in FIDA and several women's rights institutions in Uganda and across Africa to be able to deliver on our commitments on gender equality. So thank you very much, and I'd like to take the opportunity to welcome you to give your remarks, Your Excellency.
Thank you very much, and a very good morning to all of you, distinguished panelists, colleagues, partners, ladies and gentlemen, from a sunny evening in Kampala. On behalf of the Embassy of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, it is my great pleasure to be part of this discussion with you today. Earlier in my career, I have been posted to New York for 3 years, and I can recall this important week of the CSW. So I'm very pleased that from a distance, I can be part of this important discussion on access to justice in the context of technology-facilitated gender-based violence. For sure, I would like to start by commending FIDA Uganda and UONet and partners for convening this timely conversation and for the important work you are doing to protect and advance the rights of women and girls in Uganda and across the region. And I do say timely because we do see so many developments. Yesterday in the news we read about Indonesia, who blocked social media for boys and girls under the age of 15. Australia just started a law, and we are really worldwide looking how can we protect boys, girls, women and men. Digital technologies are transforming societies at an unprecedented pace, and we all enjoy it. The fact that I can be part of your meeting today is as a result of the digital technologies. They offer remarkable opportunities for participation, innovation, and civic engagement. However, these same technologies are increasingly being used as tools of harms. Women and girls, and especially those active in public, through politics, advocacy, journalism, and leadership, are facing evolving forms of abuse in online space. This form of violence, and you started the discussion already, takes many forms, including online harassment, cyberstalking, the non-consensual sharing of intimate images, coordinated hate campaigns, and threats of violence. It is much more than an online inconvenience. And what makes it particularly challenging is the speed and scale at which it spreads. Harmful content can circulate within minutes, while survivors often face complex reporting systems and limited avenues for redress. It limits participation in democratic processes and undermines women leadership. It silences critical voices through intimidation and harassment and discourages women from occupying spaces where their voices are needed most. We all agree that online GBV is a crime, for which it's often far too easy to escape accountability and prosecution. As a society, we need a collaborative and holistic response that is rich in innovation and capable of stopping discourse in its tracks. Governments can curb technology-facilitated gender-based violence by establishing and enforcing laws that criminalize online abuse, equipping law enforcement and judicial institutions to respond effectively, and regulating digital platforms to ensure accountability. They can also raise public awareness, provide survivors support services, and work with civil society to create safer, more inclusive digital spaces for women and girls. But all these things are easier said than done. We know the difficulties when it comes to digital harassment. Justice institutions should be equipped with the skills, tools, and frameworks necessary to investigate and prosecute digital harms. Technology companies must take responsibility for ensuring that their platforms are safe and accountable. And I can assure you that the Dutch government is also having a number of legal trials with the Microsofts, with the TikToks, with the Metas, because it is so hard to get those mega companies accountable. Luckily, civil society plays also an indispensable role in advocating for survivors, raising awareness, documenting violation, and pushing for stronger laws and policies. The Netherlands has long stood for the protection of human rights, the rule of law, and gender equality, and we will continue doing so. These are not abstract principles for us. They are fundamental values that guide our international partnership and development cooperation. We firmly believe that societies thrive when women and girls are safe, empowered, and able to participate fully in political, economic, and social life. Defending women's rights is therefore central to our broader commitment to inclusive democracy and sustainable development. Through various programs, the Netherlands remains committed to strengthening accountability, expanding civic space, and promoting human rights in Uganda. We are proud to support initiatives that empower civil society organizations to advocate for justice, strengthen legal systems, and ensure that the voices of women and marginalized communities are heard and respected. And we don't do this alone. We are very pleased with our partnership with Denmark, with Sweden, with Ireland, because only by joining hands we are able to make a difference. Events like this today demonstrate the value of bringing together governments, institutions, civil society, researchers, and technology actors to jointly reflect on the challenges faced and the solutions we must pursue. No single actor can address technology-facilitated gender-based violence alone. It requires cooperation, innovation, and a shared commitment to justice. Ultimately, our goal is simple but powerful: to ensure that women and girls can participate safely, freely, and confidently in digital spaces, just as they should in physical spaces. When women's voices are protected, democracies are stronger. When women can lead without fear, societies are more inclusive and resilient. And the Netherlands remains committed to working alongside Ugandan partners and all of you to advance that gender equality and that protection of civic space. I wish you a really insightful and fruitful discussion, and I look forward to the insights that will emerge from today's discussions and to continue collaboration as we work together to build safer, more inclusive digital spaces for all. Thank you very much, and I wish you a very interesting meeting.
Thank you so much for making that time and for such wonderful commitments you're making in your opening remarks. Thank you for your investment. It is yielding results, I must assure you. For those that are here, a gentle note that the washrooms are right at that exit. When you get out, you'll be able to access the washrooms. There's also tea and coffee at the back, so feel free to pick some before the end of the event. I'll now come back for the last round of questions to our speakers, and I'll begin with Patricia. Patricia, you did speak about what technology companies are doing and what you see as the future of the work that they are doing in addressing technology-facilitated violence. But as an NGO at FIDA, as the network that brings together women organizations, we are interested in seeing how do we support, how do we make reporting more accessible, how do we work with the big tech in a manner that makes sense for the women that we serve in these organizations.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Like I mentioned before, things have changed. We cannot sit and say that the big tech have not done anything. They are doing something. They've gone ahead to issue 103 policies on TFGBV. They've gone ahead to have major platforms. I mean, Meta has one, TikTok, Google. They've created some sort of safety net. However, what we need to do now is to create a case of how do we work together? How does Meta work with FIDA Uganda? Because clearly they need the grassroots people on the ground. If anything happens to someone in Uganda, the first reporting place away from the police, it would be FIDA Uganda. So it comes to what CPESA has been doing. Or what we are continuing to do, away from doing the trainings at grassroots levels. We also have community meetings with the big tech, roundtables, as mentioned during FIFA, our annual conference that we always have every September. We always have them in the room asking these questions. And I think the UPR will work, given that Uganda is up for review this year. If we can document all these cases, it was interesting to hear all these first-hand experiences in the room. If we can have this, and then we go and table this down, because the issue has always been having a generic reporting system. It should be tailor-made. It should be categorized that, you know, in a way that works for the people on the ground, right? So what works for A cannot work for B. And it shouldn't be a point where a survivor or someone that is affected has to go through a policy page of, 100 pages to tick A, B, C, D to just file a case. And also we need to look at how are they helping in keeping the evidence in a good shape, not altered, not deleted to be forgotten, but kept in a way that it will also be used for accountability and also to create some legal precedency. So yes, the answer to that would be, let's focus on having these credible experiences documented, and then also have a leeway, have these community meetings to ask them, because they're always willing. I can assure you, my first time actually to see them, I was like, what is their interest? But then it comes down to, they also have these community desks in their offices. Uganda can survive without a certain company, but can they survive? Maybe or maybe not. You have to look at the margin of profits that they get from the continent in Africa, as Africa. So it's a two-way traffic. They need us, we need them. And they always show up for this conference because it's all about internet freedoms in Africa. They listen to the civil society. So it's now to bridge that gap, as I mentioned before, tech companies, civil society, and then the justice institutions. Because right now what we are seeing is tech companies and justice, which would be government. But then the civil society organizations are the ones doing the documentation. They're the ones dealing with the victims on the ground on a day-to-day basis. We have already mapped out all the instruments the legal fraternity could give us. We have even added what is at the African Union level, the resolution 522, that specifically talks about the protection of women in online spaces. So now it's up to us. Let's meet them, let's have this roundtable with the evidence and say, this was done, it wasn't handled well. Can you have translations? Can the languages work also, right? Can we have, can it work for a person in Uganda who is maybe upcountry and has faced ABCD? Because in most cases, the meetings we have, there is always like, do you have all these cases? However, I'll also have to mention, Meta has over the time mentioned that Africa is not using the reporting tools very well. We complain from these meetings, but we don't go ahead to lodge these complaints on the internet or in the platforms that they give us. The oversight board had a report mentioning that Africa, with all the reports that they get from the whole world, Africa has the least reported cases. But again, it goes back to, for a lack of a better word, I would say ignorance. Maybe people don't know where to report such violations, or maybe they do and you don't see the point because the remedies take a while, or it's always been a moot point. So I do invite you September this year, from the 28th to the 1st of October, we'll be in Mauritius for the FIFA Africa conference that CIPESA always holds annually. Let's have these conversations. I can assure you we'll have these tech companies there because we always have these community meetings with them. And let's continue with this conversation, especially on UPR also. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Patricia. I already see opportunities for collaboration for NGOs in this space. I think the UPR is one of those that she has mentioned. FIFA also looks like an opportunity for us to meet and have conversations with other Africans that are talking about TFGPV. She's mentioned the report from Africa, the fact that we are not utilizing the reporting tools. And I think I have sort of a response to that, Patricia. Many times when someone gets abused online, I think the first thing someone thinks about is exiting the space altogether, right? For the quickest safety, because you're thinking, I said, on me this thing anyway, let me exit altogether. And yet that's not usually the way to do. Do we even encourage users of this internet or users of technology to be able to utilize the already available mechanisms from the big tech? But also, I think it's important for an accountability forum or accountability platforms for us between NGOs and the big tech and how they are developing reporting mechanisms for the citizens that utilize this technology. I'll come back to you, Samari, and this is the last round of questions, ladies and gentlemen, so do not you worry, we'll be closing in the next few minutes. From your perspective, what gaps do you see exist in our current framework, especially or particularly to address TFGBV? I know that we do boast of a very heavy legal framework back home in Uganda, right? As she spoke about the African Union and Resolution 522 that we are also utilizing to make sure that victims get the support that they need. But what are some of those particular policy gaps that you see that may be important for us to fill to enable us support survivors better in their quest for justice?
Thank you, Elizabeth. When it comes to cases of domestic violence, we have our Domestic Violence Act, and it will provide for us policies, measures, how to ensure that victims are protected and how the reporting should go, and other protective measures or other protective orders that you can seek from court. That is not the same when it comes to technology facilitated violence. So we need clear legal policies and that will guide on reporting, that will also guide on protection of victims or survivors of this crime, and then also that will make reference to how the outcomes of court will be, and then the subsequent follow-ups. We also have gaps in terms of the offenses that are provided for, especially for online aspects. While we may have offenses that you talked about, cyber harassment, but when the people who are dealing in pornographic content, they don't deal in it sometimes because they want to abuse, but sometimes because they are making money out of it. So for those who are making money out of it, there must be measures of how we can recover part of the proceeds that are being made, but then also make it a clear offense for online exploitation. So our law does not specifically provide for online exploitation, although it provides for the various abuses. So we need to have interventions in amendments of laws to make it more inclusive, but then also to ensure that perpetrators are held accountable. We need to have an appropriate guide to police on how to recover investigation, recover evidence. I'll never forget one of the critical cases I think we handled, and the police arrived at the scene, and in their heads, their first issue was rescue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they did a good job in rescuing, but then they forgot that they needed to recover evidence. So when they arrived with the rescue, and then I'm meeting, there was a do you recover any of the items that were used in recording or gathering this and what have we forgotten? So by the time they went back, the small little cameras that had been fitted in the ceiling had been removed and we couldn't get. So up to today, we failed to prosecute the case. So we need to guide them appropriately on and have clear steps for them on what to follow. So after rescue, it's critical that we also know that there should be a prosecution that is going to hold people accountable. And I also mentioned the fact that we need to ensure that our courts are also facilitated enough to admit this kind of evidence. And technology is a big issue. So I can't come with a digital device to a courtroom, for example, that is a country and that has no facilities on the computer. Sometimes you may put the information in the computer and the computer itself corrupts the evidence. So if those facilities are available, then it will make it easier. And then also having a clear referral pathway. You're talking about cases sometimes being reported to FIDA or reported to an NGO, reported to somebody else. Then when they are reported, we need to work. I've mentioned about collaborative work. You provide what you can at your table and then make a referral to another organization for something else. And these referrals not only have to be coordinated but timely, so that we don't lose out in the process of everything. I thank you.
And maybe before you hand the mic to Rita for her last response, what initiatives in your office do you see as being able to undertake with CSOs like us to enhance the readiness of the DPP's office to manage TFGPP as an offense?
All right. Like I mentioned earlier, as the office, we appreciate that we cannot deal away with technology. And therefore, we have a full unit in the office dealing with cybercrime and also dealing with GBV-related cases. Now, we are part of the national response team, but like I said, most times we may miss up the gap that comes and the support that comes from CSOs. And it would be important that on the various forums that we have, that we can join together with government so that we can work together. So as the office of the DPP, our mandate under the Constitution is to direct police to conduct investigations. So we believe that with that heavy mandate, we can always be very supportive in terms of ensuring quick reporting and follow-up of many of those cases. So we are open to collaboration and we are open to working with everybody because we understand that on our own, we cannot manage much. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I want to open this up for the next 5 minutes, since we only have actually 4 minutes to the closure. For questions and comments, my online audience, I have not forgotten about you. I know you're there. I'd like to give you the opportunity, the priority, since you're not at the table physically, ask your first question or comments, and then I will come and take a question. 1, 2, 3 questions. So yes, I see Alice. Kindly unmute and ask your question or make a comment, please.
We are the 𝐿H𝐵 here.
Sorry, just make sure that it's only one device.
Yes, we have one of us here.
There is an echo, so that means there are 2 people with devices that are signed in your location or seated right next to you. So just make sure that only one device is unmuted to speak. Let's not lose you, Alice. Just make sure you only have one device that's unmuted, because I think several people around you are logged on.
Good evening.
Yes, good evening. You're now
My
clear.
name is, I hope you're getting me.
Yes,
Hello?
loud and clear. Yes, please, I can get you.
Okay.
Mm.
My name is Adit Victoria. I am a community legal volunteer with FIDA Uganda, Arua, and also a probation officer, probation and social welfare officer. I serve my community with guidance from FIDA, Uganda, Arua district towards access to justice for women, girls, children, and then vulnerable men. And my question goes like this. How can a policymaker ensure that grassroots communities are not only users of technology systems, but also included in combating and included in meaningful towards combating violence, combating violence on the internet, in line with having victims access justice, but also being part of the policy reform. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
There's something, yes, it's clear. How do we include grassroots communities in our work on building these solutions that we are talking about here? How do we ensure we don't leave anyone behind? I think as the network lead wanted to respond to that, let me hear from the other three questions, and then we'll be good to go.
Hi, my name is Zuhair. I'm from the American Pakistan Foundation, and I'm currently a student at the University of Virginia studying Masters in Public Policy. My question was kind of on the flip side of like the victims. I want to talk about more about the perpetrators. Like, what is the typical, just so I understand, like the typical offense and the punishment that they receive? And my question was about like repeat offenders. Is that a normal thing? And what is the rehabilitation process like? And what can we do to fix that?
Right. Thank you. Punishment for perpetrators. The issue of repeated offenders. Do we even have repeated offenders in online offenses yet? I think somebody will respond to that. Yes,
okay, thank you very much. I would like to ask whether we think that we could support existing public institutions to have a complete system. Because only one case in Parliament has been reported, but a lot more are happening. And because people know there is no complaint system, and they have to guard against being embarrassed in public. So balancing remaining relevant and choosing to be safe becomes a problem. It becomes very difficult, but I wanted to know whether we could support existing public institutions to have a complaint system. This technological.
Hi, I'm Navatish, and I work for a child rights organization in India. And I wanted to ask, what are some of the differentiated offences you see facing girls rather than just women? I know you mentioned that young women were being attacked online when they tried to attend lectures, and so were leaving education. So what are some of the online offences that you see that are more specific to girls and young women?
Right. There are questions at the back, and there's a question online in a minute, so that we are within our time. Our time is fast spent, but I think I'll allow a minute for the last two questions.
Thank you very much. It's not a question, it's more of a quick comment. I'm Morava. I work at the International Telecommunication Union, which is a UN specialized agency for digital technologies. And I just wanted to say that I'm very happy and thankful for the permanent mission of Uganda for organizing this event, because of course technology facilitated GBV is issue that is very important. And basically at ITU, we have this global partnership, which is called 𝐏𝐜𝐜𝐿 Global Partnership for Digital Equality for Gender Equality in the Digital Age, created by ITU and UN Women. And inside of this partnership, we're working with different UN agencies, different governments, NGO, and the private sector. We have also private sector members. So basically just to call to invite all people that are here, if they're interested, to come to me or to the side event that we're organizing today at 3, and to just see how we can build, solutions together, because as it was said by the deputy ambassador and some people here, collaboration is the key. And I would also be very grateful if we could count on the government of Uganda as part of the partnership. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I'm Naranga Sarah.
Yes.
From the Uganda Prison Service. I'm not asking a question, but I'd like to respond to the question on rehabilitation of perpetrators. In Uganda Prison Service, we have come up with a sexual offenders rehabilitation program, and we have developed a module which people follow, like the social workers which we follow to rehabilitate them. It's basically about first to reform, you remove that act of raping or incest or whatever, the attitude. Then we go into skilling them, and at the end of it all, we reintegrate them. It is a process. But the most important thing is to first remove the attitude, the act, the mindset of committing that crime. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
I've been alerted that there are some comments online. Just allow me a minute before our panelists respond. Uganda has a national gender-based violence database to track GBV cases. However, many technology-facilitated GBV instances are not clearly categorized within the system. How is the government planning to strengthen the database to specifically capture TFGBV cases so that we can properly track trends and design effective responses? And this is from Doreen Tisache, who is a community legal volunteer from FIDA Uganda. I also see another comment that may be important for us to address from another CLV from Arua. We have a lot of CLVs, great. There's limited data on technology-facilitated violence in Uganda. So to address this, he is recommending that we conduct a national level research on the prevalence of TFGBV. I'm going to request that you also check out the research that FIDA published with support from Rutgers on TFGBV. That's on the FIDA website, and you can actually access it on there. He's also saying that we need to establish monitoring systems for online abuse cases. I think that's for FIDA Uganda to take note, CPESA and ONET. Then collect gender disaggregated data on cybercrimes instances. I think it may be important for us to collaborate with the DPP's office on that. And then there's something around research findings to inform policy and program development. Thank you very much for the comments online. I think then we will have our panelists respond in one small minute, please. One small minute.
My name is Farida Bena. I'm the UN representative of a feminist NGO called _Woman. We focus on ending violence against women and girls. My question is to all the panelists, especially Patricia, about whether you see a gap in international law on this issue, digital violence, and if so, how can we fill this gap together? I heard the UPR is a good way to go. Is there anything else we can do at the international level? Thank you.
Yeah, Patricia, is there anything more we can do at the international level? And do you see a gap in the international framework on TFGBV? I'd like to begin with you, Patricia, since you're online, and then I'll have Rita and then somebody respond to the questions that have been asked. And then as you respond, you could just give your last closing note so that we do not run completely out of time.
That's fine. Thank you. The answer is yes, there is more we can do, but also, I mean, even what we have at the moment is not fully utilized, right? The UPR, they are always putting out all these emails to people, please use this mechanism, please use these advocacy measures to do this, this and that. And most people, they want to stop at submitting UPR reports instead of going ahead to be in Geneva every November for the pre-sessions, where you're able to at least have those 5 minutes to table those few recommendations. Just last November, we did a UPR on Rwanda, and CIPESA was still in Geneva to do those 5 minutes. TFGBV took over the room. Everyone was asking questions. How is this manifesting? And we just, we are about to submit a UPR for Tanzania. The same issue is rising. So I'm not saying this, that it's not an isolated issue that we should let it go. It cuts across the continent. And given that CIPESA works across, we get to see all these overlapping issues that are mushrooming. At the international level, yes, we do have the mechanisms with the UPR. For Africa, we have the resolution 522. Perhaps we can work more with the African Commission so that we have more provisions, so that other African countries can also piggyback on that. There is more to do. I wouldn't say that those are enough. And when it comes to advocacy or pushing for any reform, it takes 2 or 3 heads. With that said, my parting shots would be CIPESA, as our name says, we are collaboration. We like collaborations, and we are an organization that thrives on such. We call upon people in the room. For the Uganda UPR, please reach out to us. Let us know your thoughts on this. We can submit together. We can do an advocacy campaign around this together. Pete, I know we have been talking about this, DPP reaching out to you. I am sure I'm going to email you, because it is one of the steps that we've been looking at when it comes to TFGBV, how best we can access the judicial system in Uganda. So please respond to us when we do finally write to you. And yeah, let us come to have that roundtable conversation. We have done this with policy. We have been to the Parliament of Uganda, having conversations with different legislators. So we would like to come down to having the judiciary also at the center stage. And once again, please, let's meet in September in Mauritius. Conversations will be more around TFGBV, internet governance, digital rights, and all that. And I promise you, you will have your tech companies there come with all these questions and evidence. And let's come out of Mauritius with answers, right? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Patricia. Then we'll hear from other analysts.
Okay, I will answer your question. Yeah, every offense has it has a punishment on it, and I'm sorry, I already talked about the rehabilitation programs, and we sometimes have repeat offenders, likely because sometimes many of them do not go through the whole system, so they will come in the middle of it. But the moment you process the case and it comes to a close-end with proper conviction and they go to our prisons, there will always be rehabilitation programs. And in terms of punishment, I think child pornography goes for 15 years, and then there are some offenses that go for 5 years, 7 years, cyber stalking, depending on the category of the offense that you have, that somebody has committed. Yes, support in public institutions. Yes, this would be a very good thing. We already have South 119, where some of the reports can be made and the protection is offered. But we have also institutions under our Computer Misuse Act. It creates a reporting body, and every person who goes to any of those institutions, that institution becomes the first response, and then they can make the necessary referrals. But I believe having a special desk where reports can be made or get complaints handled in a more private way would be another critical aspect to follow up on, and that can encourage people to report against them. The offenses that are more specific to women, we normally have cases like hate speech, and then we have cyber bullying and cyber harassment, and sometimes sharing or their pornographic, yes, information that they share when they are in an intimate relationship. Then, because the relationship is at the verge or there is a disagreement, the other partner goes online and publishes their private information. So those are the common ones that we see against girls, and also the young girls become more vulnerable because of the excitement that comes with it, and most of them are not aware of the consequences that come with recording and making video things about their private issues. They are also not aware of the dangers of sharing their photos. Sometimes they share photos innocently with people they believe that they trust, and then those photos are manipulated for criminal activity. So those are the cases that we have to find. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Rita?
Yeah, thank you. There was a question from the community volunteer on how community volunteers can be involved in policy making processes. And when a country is developing a policy, at least I know government tries to consult as much as possible. But even in this case, when you're working with FIDA or any other organization, we do consultations, and consultations are then aggregated into alternative policy that we present to the different government institutions. So that's one way they can participate right from the community level, but also you're encouraged to engage your local leaders for your voice to be heard at that level. So consultation is important. Policy dialogue and interface at the community level is important. I think somebody has really talked about the type of offenses, revenge porn, pornography, sharing nude photos. These are really for the young girls or the young women. Intimate, photos. That's what they really suffer from most. And the third one, which we are glad that we have the Ministry of Gender, the staff is here, the minister's staff is here. Our Ministry of Gender has a database for capturing data on violence against women and generally. But I think what is coming up here is that we need to now have a specific aspect on TFGBV. I want to believe that both the ministry, but even us, the actors, will take that up to ensure that this is an area that is clearly mapped and also gender disaggregated. There is a call for research, deeper research. I think that is critical, that we need to have a deeper research. But also looking at the policy analysis, policy versus practice. We might have laws, but the practice is totally different, and therefore we need to have that analysis to come up with the type of strategies we need to take to address. Finally, as I conclude, the real lesson for me from decades of women's organizing is that new spaces will always reflect old inequalities. So when we have issues of TFGBV coming up, it's not something totally new. It brings back all the old inequalities that we've been talking about for decades, even for those who came before us. So unless there is intentionally transformational approaches that we put in place, these inequalities continue to revolve. They change pace. It's like an amoeba, right? Today you're dealing with this, tomorrow it comes in technology, and another day it comes Before we knew only physical violence. Then it came, nobody wanted to talk about sexual violence. Rape, marital rape, that was an abomination. Then we started talking about marital rape. Then we started talking about defilement. You know, people used to hide. How can your father, how do you talk about your father, your uncle? And then now we are talking about technology. So they keep on changing, and therefore we must be intentional. The opportunity before us, though, is that for us to be able to ensure that digital spaces expand, we need to also ensure that our commitments are real, that we're not just having rhetoric, they are real, they are just and inclusive for women and girls. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Our participants, especially those that are back home, because I know it's really out of work hours. Thank you very much for everybody that registered and did come to this event. I just thought I'd make certain conclusions, especially from the different questions. You asked a question about the gap that we are seeing in international law, especially at the UN level. First, to recognize that there's that UN framework, model framework that we have read about at FIDA, but there are certain gaps that we'd like to bring to our attention. One of those is the lack of a unified definition and scope. Right now, we must give credit to Uganda for the processes around the Sexual Offences Bill. I know that the Sexual Offences Bill is one of those laws that is trying to, upgrade and meet the newer forms of violence. So I do hope that Madam maybe out after this meeting would engage with you on how we can ensure that that law is expounded to cover all these forms that we are talking about today. But we also see a lack of corporate accountability. At FIDA, we believe that big tech are businesses making big money and big profits from these platforms. So if the UN is talking about a model framework for addressing TFGBV, then we cannot run away from the responsibility of corporate companies paying for the harm that comes from these platforms. I think the government will even have a bigger voice or will be supported better in these punishments that are handed if corporate accountability is brought into the conversation. And then I think the other gap we have seen at FIDA is enforcement in cross-border cases. And I think Samali can speak about that. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but I think that's something that we must pay attention to. Enforcement across border, because we are talking about online, there are virtual spaces, and that can create a lot of difficulty for lawyers to be able to do their work. And then lastly, but not anywhere least, inadequate protection for marginalized communities. And I think it's because what's marginalized in the US may not be marginalized in Europe, may not be marginalized in Uganda. But I think using that UN model, we may be able to address some of those things. I also see a need for us to link NGOs to DPP's office and Ministry of Gender for the reporting pathway. We already do have that framework, that system, the complaint system in Ministry of Gender. So how do we make sure that we extract that data as FIDA, as CPESA, as ONET, to then work with the DPP's office to be able to support or enrich the data and research that we are doing. And the UPR process has come out very strongly, and I think we move out of here with a way forward of utilizing UPR to enable us share reports and data on technology facilitated violence. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for staying around and sticking to the end of the event. From CPESA, from Ministry of Gender, FIDA Uganda, ONET, and RUTDAS, one of our development partners. Thank you very much and have a great day.